And speaking of the Union Against Hunger, I turn next to one of the driving forces, a founding member and the national coordinator of the Union Against Hunger, Busiso Moyo, to tell us specifically about a campaign that we are working on to try to influence the corporate sector, let's say, to behave a bit better in terms of their food systems activities.
Fantastic.
Over to you, Busiso.
Colleagues, if you don't mind, I will stand. It's after lunch and I just need to come alive. Good people, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. So my presentation, of course, speaks to this newly formed social movement that is seeking to bring about some kind of tangible claim on this idea of the right to food. So today I'm just going to be talking about, what we've been able to get off the ground, but more importantly, what our thinking is in terms of some of the activities that largely have informed a whole range of our campaigns and activities since our formation, which was on the 26th of February earlier this year. So we are new kids on the block. We are still, finding our feet, so to speak. Kenny, next slide, please. So, cut a long story short, we know that in South Africa we have a codified constitutional expression that speaks to the fact that all South Africans have the constitutional right to food. More importantly, we extend that to basic nutrition when we are now looking at our children and when we are talking about the best interest of the child. Now, here's the problem that we have in South Africa. When we look at our human rights heritage as this country, it's very vibrant. Look at other socioeconomic rights. We've been able to contest, we've been able to advance that struggle insofar as the public interest litigation space is concerned in South Africa. But when it comes to the right to food, it would appear that we have some kind of paralysis. So I always say this, if we had the president of the country in here right now, what would we want to tell him about what he needs to do so that we can fulfill our right to food and nutrition? I leave that answers to you to meditate and think about. Now we go back to the next slide, which then kickstarts my presentation. So in light of all of this, what is the Union Against Hunger? The Union Against Hunger has realized this paralysis, but more importantly, we are angry. We are angry because we are hungry, we are angry because we're jobless, we are angry because we're landless. And we know that ours is a context of the highest inequality in the world. So in light of that realpolitik and that situational analysis, what is it then that needs to happen? And we have come on board as the Union Against Hunger, and more importantly, what we are saying is we recognize that this is a very wicked problem, and we don't want to be given to easy analysis. So part of that is that we come in with humility, we humble ourselves, acknowledging all the good work that is happening in this space. However, ours is to turn this anger into hope. We want some kind of action over the rhetoric. We know the academics have given us that evidence base. We know what the problem is. We know our people are hungry. So what needs to be done? So as part of that, that is the situational analysis that motivates us as the Union Against Hunger. Take a snapshot of that. We are talking about some of the unacceptable facts, right, that characterize this food system story, this right to food struggle of ours in South Africa. So there you have it. So those were our motivations initially. And part of that, we then decided that our point of departure as the Union Against Hunger is that we will start to interrogate this idea of food systems transformation. We hear it all the time. Food systems must transform, but to what end, right? That's an incomplete sentence. So we need to transform these food systems in a way that we are clear on what the entry points are and what a nourishing food system for all can then look like. So as a result of that thinking, we then came up with a couple of demands. Now, I'm not going to dwell too much on our demands, but this is our vision of what a nourishing food system entails. Do take time to engage the website, which is unionagainsthunger.org. We have done our level best to kind of document our journey thus far, but you'll get a better understanding of what we are trying to achieve, especially around these demands. Cool, next slide. Right, so with that said, I started off and I said, if we had the president in the room, what would we tell him? Now, I'm taking this slightly further. What is the other big elephant in the room that we're not acknowledging? It's the fact that the government does not necessarily produce food. So we know who the power players are insofar as the provision of food is concerned. But at the end of the day, right, in as much as we acknowledge that, how is it that South Africans are currently putting a claim on their own right to food? So if people do not have jobs, how are they meant to put a claim on their right to food? Because they access their right to food through incomes, through having purchasing power, and so forth. So that is what we are talking about. So when we look at the situational analysis in this country, we know that household incomes do not correlate to the food prices that we see in the stores and so forth. And not only that, when we also look at social safety nets, right? The idea that the government is trying to intervene and carry this burden and take care of those of us who are hungry and at the bottom of the pyramid, the story still doesn't make sense. Right? Because when we look at the child support grant, which is the most crucial, right? Remember when I started off, I was speaking about the best interest of the child. So we don't need the government to come with excuses about why our children are starving, why they're dying, why they're being malnutrition. We all know how grave that situation is. But then, that's the logic, right? Even the child support grant is way, way below the food poverty line. So we would want the government to come on board and explain to us the logic of how it is that they come up with these measurements. How much is this child meant to spend for transport, for energy security, for a whole range of other activities that will then ensure that nutrition, which is affected by a whole range of other issues, is then paramount in terms of the development of the child. So there we have it. There's a snapshot of what we would actually need for an adequate nutritious basket that takes care of our children, right? So part of that is that we want the child support grant as a case in point to be extended to 957. I don't have too much time. Next slide. Right. Next slide. Right, so, cut a long story short, what are we doing? We are mobilizing citizen power. Why? We need power. We need power as hungry people. There must be a political cost to people ignoring us. And part of that is that we're currently mobilizing citizen power. And part of that is to say hunger is a crime against our people. But who are the criminals? Go read that op-ed. It will answer that question. Next slide, please. Right. More importantly, there's a vibrant campaign that we've gotten off the ground, and this is squarely focused on corporate actors. Why? Because we're acknowledging once again that the safeguarding of sections 27 and sections 28 in the Constitution is a work of a whole range of people, right? Our farm workers, our children, informal food sector, the right to food advocates, the academics, you name it, we can keep going. So as a result of that, what is it that is needed to happen in terms of having a unified front where we all come together and sing from the same hymn book in advancing the struggle? Once again, read that. Now, those of you who would know, we had a vibrant campaign that we got off the ground earlier this year, which was focused on ShopRite in particular. ShopRite is the biggest shareholder in the food value chain. Now, there's a lot that can be said about this, but most importantly is that this slide here gives a snapshot of the struggle that we're faced with in South Africa. The inequality crisis as it expresses itself through the food system. So how do we address this inequity when we see that entities like ShopRite make 20 million rands profits a day? But then when we look at the wages of their own staff and their own employees, they do not even speak to this idea of a living wage. Now, in context of that, what is the role of ShopRite as a corporate actor in also carrying and fulfilling the right to food? I'll leave it to you to meditate over that one. Next slide. Right, so you know what it is that we've been doing. So we've taken this battle to the doorstep of ShopRite. We've had a petition that is live and it's active. Please engage with that, sign it, check it out on the Union Against Hunger website. Not so long ago, last month, we had World Food Day campaign activities where we went and confronted ShopRite head on at their headquarters in Centurion. We have 20,000 plus signatures. The number is still growing. However, where we are now, it's about what do we do next, comrades, because we do know that ShopRite is currently having an adversarial relationship with the Union Against Hunger, which takes me to the next slide. Right, where are we with ShopRite? We have been engaging them particularly on those three demands to say, show leadership, come to the table, tell us what your understanding of the struggle is, because remember, ultimately it's also about vulnerability assessment. So these people have the data to tell us how grave the situation is, what is it that needs to happen in the space, but because we are engaging key working class formations in South Africa, the struggle that we now have is that ShopRite wanted to dictate to us who should come to the table and speak on behalf of the hungry, the landless, and the poor in South Africa, and we will not accept that. This is an ongoing struggle, but so you know, all this noise that we have been making, good people, we are making inroads. Like I said when I started, what would we want to tell the president? I want to let you know that he's already listening, and part of it is that he's already speaking our kind of language. Once again, get involved, engage with the website, and then let's figure the story out. I think that's all I have to share today. Thanks, people.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Busiso. A very-
Power of people together.